And all of us, I would say, at some point in our lives, have had someone or a group of someone's whose story we think we know. And we know them. We know them. We don't need to hear from them because we know them. They're shifty, they're not trustworthy, they're lazy, whatever, they're dirty, they're whatever. That we have already in our minds their story. And yet, if we give ourselves the chance to actually hear their story, we hear what is different, and we get to hear what is the same. I always like to tell people about, for me, one of the learnings about our difference and how important it is has come through my mother and her love of gardening. And I remember, somebody saying at one point in talking about the work that I do around race and racism and cultural diversity, about somebody saying, I don't see difference. I just see human beings. And flashing back to my mother in her garden and how much thought she puts into having, the roses over here. And, she's actually always embarrassed by my knowledge or lack thereof of gardening. But, I like to throw out names of flowers, and they probably half of them are weeds that I'm naming. But anyway, that she would have the roses, the azaleas, the whatever, the blah, 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 the bird of paradise, all of that she thinks about what would look good together, what contrasts and all the rest of it. And I just imagined somebody walking into her garden and saying to her, I don't see difference. I don't see different. All I see are flowers. And I'm thinking, that person would not walk out of that garden. They would be carried out on a stretcher. And so, I think the same, and I imagine that the person who created us, that our God feels the same way. When somebody says, "Oh, I don't see difference. All I see are human beings." She's probably sitting up there saying, "What? After I worked that hard to make the different languages and colors and cultures, and you're saying you don't notice it?" So whenever somebody says something like that, I step a couple of steps back, because that lightning bolt is not going to strike me. I'm far from that one. That when we say we seek common ground, it is not to say we pretend that there is no diversity. When we seek common ground, it is to say we recognize that our differences are in fact gifts, that our differences are in fact opportunities, that our differences are in fact our strength as a community, that our differences are what enable us to survive and thrive, that the different gifts we each bring are absolutely necessary for our common good. And so, if we strive for justice, if we seek common ground, it is the ground of our shared humanity, blessed with different gifts and opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful, inspiring speech. That's wonderful. I think we need to give her another round of applause. Thank you, thank you. Now, Ms. Tutu will entertain some questions from the audience. So if anybody have a question, I will pass the microphone on to you. This is totally a surprise for them, Ms. Tutu. We didn't tell them prior to.
Okay.
So.
We don't have to do questions. That's fine.
Right. Anybody will have a question for Ms. Tutu?
Good evening.
Good evening.
As you're aware, everyone knows you as Dr. Tutu's daughter. Mm-hmm. And I think you in yourself is 100% yourself. And I think tonight you have shown who you are, the way you think, and how much you have presented to us tonight. I'm sure a lot of us is walking out of here with a better mindset on the colors of the world. When I say colors, I mean the peoples of the world. My question to you is, we have a diversity, especially in Tallahassee, with people from all over the world. And Ms. Betty Jensen is a person that could give vouch for that with the international students that she have around her. Mm-hmm. What would you say you would like to live with us, especially the international students, when it concerns everything you said, and in moving forward, in creating the opportunity, not only for us, but for our future generation to understand that there is so much more when you balance the good and the bad in us, and we could really give out more bad than we can good.
I would say that, particularly to international students, I would say what I said today at the rally, that to be willing to share your story. I told them today that I was an international student, and there came times when I would want to roll my eyes with some of the questions that people would ask about Africa and all the rest of it, and yet that it is an opportunity to share, to be able to share our story and our experience of even how you came to be in Tallahassee, what made you choose to come to Tallahassee. I think it's something that is instructional for students who are from here about what makes somebody think about leaving their own country to go for an education. But I think that for all of us, what I would say is that the biggest thing for me is still to be willing to tell your story and to be willing to hear other people's stories, to give people the space to speak their own story. And in a wide range of circumstances, I think that we find ourselves labeling and deciding that we know people based on all kinds of things, and yet we don't.
Thank you. Any other question?
There's one over here.
Hello.
Hi.
I was wondering, probably we're kind of on time, on a schedule, but I was wondering if you would like to share your story with us.
My story? Woo! Do you have like 10 years?
As in, what made you leave South Africa? How come you chose this path? And if you would ever go back from the immigrant perspective.
To South Africa? Yeah, I grew up in South Africa during apartheid, and tertiary educational opportunities for black students were very limited when I was growing up, and I was very fortunate in that my father had traveled outside and had visited many places, and I knew that. We had lived in England, and so I knew I didn't want to go back there for varsity. And I had never been to the States, and decided that I wanted to try for the U.S. And Berea College was attractive to me because Berea College students don't pay tuition; all the students work for the college, and so.